a presentation by Dr. Najma Sadiq. She is leading the effort in terms of designing the evaluation criteria for the research produced by our fellows. Today is the first time we're going to be introducing these indicators to you. Hopefully, we would really, towards the end of our set of presentation, we would like to open this for a dialogue as to how we can improve, how we can actually create more meaningful sub-indices, what can we measure, what shouldn't we measure, and what are the long-term prospects for this evaluation criteria. So I like to end here and hand over the session to Dr. Najma Sadiq for her presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's share the slides. Okay, wait a second. Okay, so before coming to trust indicators and information and news trust index that we have developed, since Puru said that I have to talk a little bit about Photovoice, so I will talk very little about Photovoice just to give you an idea that what that methodology is about. Actually, Photovoice is basically a participatory action research method. It comes in the category of advocacy research, where you engage community in the designing of the whole research process, in identifying the issues, and also the participant of that community bring to you the data related to a particular issue through photos. For example, you can identify a community that has an issue of hunger, and you ask them to show hunger through different photographs, the way the community see that issue of hunger or any other issue, social issue that they are facing. For example, it could be hygiene. It could be even the issue of identity, like if that community does not have an identity or recognition in the society in general, then that community basically shows through photos how that struggle and crisis of identity is affecting their daily life. So, and then at the end, the photographs pertaining to any issues are taken to policymakers and relevant stakeholders who can influence that issue or who can bring something to that to resolve that issue. So this is what Photovoice is about. So in simple words, we can say that it is a place where we are not telling the community what they should do or what their issue is. They are telling the researcher or the person who is intervening the community that what their issue is and how that issue is being projected. So in Trust Fellowship, the reason that we picked this methodology and not any other methodology is because we were training journalists, and we wanted that there should be a research method that is closer to journalistic practices that help them not only to bring some research output, but also a detailed investigative story as well. So that's why we use the Photovoice method, because it is not just a method, it is a technique of looking at a particular social issue. I thought I'm brief.
This is great. Please go ahead.
Okay, so now about the information and news trust index. Actually, the idea started with this, that we have to develop a kind of trust indicators that we can use to analyze the content to see the level of trust within the news or information content. So we are working on this index or indicators for a very long time, and with a lot of extended deadlines, because it requires a lot of work, and it is not an effort that a single person can do, because you need a lot of consultations and brainstorming technique. So something that started as trust indicator is now transformed into information and news trust index, that we hope that we can use this index to measure trust within information and news sources. Now I'll share with you the constructs and how we have designed and what is the thought process of this whole index. The first thing is to identify trust constructs in information and news. So the first step was to determine what are the characteristics that are prereq or integral for credibility and trust of news and information. So we identify those constructs and concepts in order to design the whole index kind of a thing. So first thing which is very important for any information and news source is that it should have a strong research behind that information piece or news content. The other thing is credibility. Right now, I'm just mentioning the constructs. I will discuss these one by one and also tell you that how we are planning to see them or measure them through the content. So the first thing, which is very integral, very important, is research. The second thing is credibility. The third thing is predictability, because in journalism, whatever kind of information people are consuming, they want to use that information to make sense of something and to predict where things are going. Fairness and balance. Again, fairness and balance are discussed and used interchangeably, because fairness is more like a philosophy and balance is how to translate that philosophy into practice. Then relevance, again, is very integral and very key aspect in terms of trust. Contextualization, presentation, the way the information is being presented. And the last thing, which is not directly linked to the content itself, but it is related to platform, but it strongly affects people trust towards a particular source of information. That's why we have added accessibility and interactivity of online platforms as a trust indicators separately, and all the other constructs that you see here from research to presentation will be computed as trust indicators for the content. So what are the trust indicators? So basically trust indicators are that first we identify that, okay, these are the concepts, these are the key factors that are very integral or very important in news content as well as any information content. Now, the thing is how to translate these concepts into concrete or measurable items. So we can measure, like, for example, if I say that, okay, if research is well, then the credibility or trust people have on an information content will be higher. So what is the well research? And what is the credibility? What should be the parameters when we talk about credibilities? So therefore, what we have done that based on each construct or concept that we have taken for our trust indicators, for our trust definition, we have created indicators or measurable items that help us in seeing those constructs within the content. Before I discuss these one by one, just bear in mind that the scoring and scale for each of the item against the trust construct will be scored as yes is equal to 2, no will be scored as 0, and 1 will be scored as not relevant will be scored as 1. The reason that we are scoring not relevant not as 0 but as 1, because if something is not relevant, then obviously the journalist will not be incorporating that aspect, but it should not affect the overall score or calculation of the score for the trust. Therefore, if an indicator is absent in the content, we will score it as 0. But if it is not relevant within the particular context or with respect to a particular frame or with respect to a particular piece that we are analyzing, then it will be graded or scored as not relevant, and 1 will be the score that will be given to this item. This is just to give you a brief idea about the scoring and scale. I will definitely talk about it, the scoring and interpretation aspect, after discussing all the items. But this is just to give you an idea so you don't get lost like what I am talking about. So first, trust construct, which is very important, is research. Because in journalism, investigation and research is very key to bringing information to public. And after going through a lot of literature and a lot of researches and the practice-based initiatives, the research in terms of journalism, when we look at it from a measurable perspective, it can be categorized into 5 items. So the first thing that we see in terms of research is the information new or current? Like, is it something that is around a recent happening? The other thing is that information should be relevant. The third thing is information should be complete. So it should give a detail about who, what, when, where, and why. The fourth important thing is that information should represent diversity. So it should have all the possible angles, because research requires you to go deeper into an issue, and diversity is one of the indicators through which you can see if the research is done well for a particular information piece. And also the fifth important thing is in research is that the information should be timely. Like, it should be reported sooner after the incident. This is particularly very relevant in terms of journalism content, because, you know, in journalism, you have to talk about current and timely and relevant things. So whatever debate, whatever piece is being addressed to should be within a particular time frame. The second construct, which is related to trust, is credibility, and credibility will be measured with these 3 items. The first item is that information is attributed to a named or identified source. So you see, when you observe a news article or a news story, a lot of information is being referred to a particular source. For example, you say the government, for example, you say Shehbaz Sharif is saying this, Imran Khan is saying this. So the credibility will be higher if information is attributed to a named and identified source. The second aspect of credibility is that information is attributed to an unnamed or unidentified source. In journalism, sometimes due to confidentiality and privacy, journalists cannot directly mention the name of the source, but they say that anonymous source or someone with promise of confidence said so and so. So the source is unnamed, but still it is attributed, like some official from the Ministry of Sciences and Technology said this. So the source is identified, attributed, but it is unnamed and unidentified. So this is important, that source identification is important, but attribution in journalism is more important, that you attribute information to a source, preferably to identified one, and in some situations you can mention the information with an unnamed or unidentified source as well. So since the question number 7 is like you are talking about attribution, so it should be a little bit trustworthy when you talk about unnamed, unidentified source. So it compromises the level of trust of people. Like, okay, sometimes, you know, people around us joke that, okay, journalists say everything like, we get this from an anonymous source, we get this from so and so, without mentioning who is the source. And that negatively affects the perception of trust. Therefore, the question number 7 will have a special coding for it. Here, the yes will be not treated as 2. Yes will be treated as 1. Not relevant, again, will be treated as 1. And no will be treated as 2. So for some items, we have special coding. For some items, we have reverse coding. For example, in item number 8, we are saying that information is not attributed to any source. So if information is not attributed to any source, it means that it is compromising the credibility. And therefore, here, no will be scored higher, like it will be 2, and yes will be 0. Because if you are saying yes, there is no attribution to any source, it means that there is no credibility. So the score will be 0. The other construct is predictability. So predictability, most of the time, the analysis, the reason that people go for analysis or conclusion of whatever someone is sharing in information piece or news content, they want to understand that, okay, how everything sums up. So what is the conclusion and what is the takeaway from that information? Therefore, it's very important from the trust perspective to see the predictability aspect of that content. And the predictability aspect of the content will be measured with 2 items. The one is that the conclusion reached based on evidence or fact, or the conclusion reached based on reasoning. So it should be one of the 2 things. And on both levels, we will be measuring that, okay, whether there was an evidence or fact related to the conclusion, or whether it was reasoning that was used in the conclusion, or maybe both are used, or maybe none is used. So if nothing is used, obviously it will be scored as 0. And another very important aspect is fairness and balance. As I said, that fairness is more like a philosophical aspect where you expect journalists to give space to different point of views. Balance is how you do it. So that's why we put fairness and balance in one umbrella. And here you can see that to measure fairness and balance, the first item talks about that the information represents differing or competing point of view. Then we say that, okay, there is fairness and balance. Particularly, you can say that item number 11 is more related to fairness, and how that fairness is balanced is measured in subsequent items. So in item number 12, you say that, okay, judgments or opinions are attributed to a source. Like if you're giving different point of views, so these point of views are basically judgments or opinions. So if these judgments or opinions are attributed to a source, then we say that, okay, it is a balanced thing. Then judgments or opinions are attributed to a source favorable to one party. So this aspect is clearly related, like, okay, you have attributed an opinion with a particular person or with a particular source, but it is just favorable to a particular party. For example, we say that, okay, Shehbaz Sharif has said that PMLN is a very good party. So this is an opinion attributed to a source, but it is just favorable to his own party. In fairness and balance, again, we have to look at these attribution and favorability from multiple aspects, like judgments and opinions are attributed to source, unfavorable to one party. So when Shehbaz Sharif is talking about PTI in a negative way, so we say that it's an opinion attributed to a source, which is Shehbaz Sharif, but it is unfavorable to PTI or any party he talks against. And these items are also specially coded, and I will explain to you later. So either they are reverse coded or they have their own coding criteria. So item number 15 is judgment or opinions are unattributed, like there is no mention of any source, but still it is favoring one party. And the last one is judgments and opinions are unattributed to a particular source, but these are unfavorable to a particular party or a single party. Then comes another trust construct, which is relevance. And relevance can be seen through 3 items. that is information is focused on socially relevant topic. So the topic should be socially relevant. Like if you talk about something that is happening in perhaps Africa. So if there is an issue of water scarcity, unless you link it with water scarcity issue in Pakistan, it may not be very socially relevant topic. Also, in relevance, it is important that the focus of the information should be on societal processes, not on the individuals. Like you should not associate something with the individual, but you should talk more about the processes and the system and the stuff like that. So the more focus should be on the process than the individuals. Information should be about an important occurrence. Obviously, in news, if something is important, only then it can be treated as news. Therefore, in relevance, it is important that information should be around some important occurrence, that only then people will take interest in it and it will make it relevant for them. Contextualization. Contextualization is putting the information within a context. So in terms of trust and in terms of contextualization in trust, important thing is that the content should provide sufficient background information. If there is not a background information, people will not be able to connect like why this happened, how this happened, and why it should be an issue right now. The content should provide local context, like it should be locally oriented. However, the content should link the topic to a wider context as well to make it more relevant for a larger audience. So this is about the contextualization, which is one of the factors that we will be looking for in our trust index. The last thing in terms of content is presentation, the way the information is being presented. It also affects the credibility or perception of trust of the content. So information should be concise and to the point, like you're talking about, you're writing more and more and more and you are not coming to the actual point, then people will lose interest. Sometimes people take more time to create the ground of talking about the issue than talking about the issue itself. So in terms of reading, what people do that they see the first line or at the most first paragraph, and then they determine that whether they have to read the whole piece or they should not read the whole piece. So it's very important that when you're presenting information, it should be concise and it should be to the point. You should not be beating about the bush. Also, in presentation, the information, it should be easy to find the information that a person is looking for. For example, in research, it is very easier for us to understand, okay, here it will be abstract, here it will be literature review, here will be methodology, data, blah, blah, blah. In journalism as well, you know, in news story, there is a concept of inverted pyramid. So the key information should be revealed first, and then you go to the information that is less significant. So information should be easy for people to identify, and it should be easy for them to find within the whole context. Lastly, in terms of presentation, information should be easier to understand in terms of its language, like whether there is a coherence, flow, and consistency. So at this aspect, we'll see the language techniques that are used for sharing our news content. Sometimes people try to complicate things by using jargons and heavy vocabulary. But when it comes to news content, public down into aspect that is easier for a larger audience to understand, because it is not a research article or a philosophical piece that we are talking about. We are talking about the information that is relevant. I told you that there are some indicators that we have designed with respect to platforms, although they are not directly linked with the content itself, but since they are related to platform and a lot of research suggests that even the aspects that are not related to content, but related to platform itself affect the way people perceive news information and whether they will trust it or not trust it. So we have platform orientation. These will be computed separately than the other items that are related to the content. And here, with respect to online platforms, two aspects that we will be focusing on in terms of trust are accessibility and interactivity. So in accessibility, it's very important that the site or app should load faster. The site or app should work well on mobile, because right now people use more mobile for news and information than the interfere with gathering news and information. Additional information should be hyperlinked. The platform should allow people to comment, because interactivity is very important. And also it's important to see whether the platform is using visuals such as photos, videos, lists, charts, or any infographics to make the reading experience of the audience comfortable, so they can understand what the whole information is about. Now, the measurement and interpretation, like, okay, we get data from all the items in yes, no, not relevant category, and how we will measure or interpret the data that we will have. So when we talk about content-based trust indicators, if a particular indicator is found within the content, then it will be measured as 2. If an indicator is not relevant to the content, it will be measured as 1. The absence of a trust indicator will be measured as 0. I told you that for some items, we have special coding. For example, for indicator number 7, 13, and 14, yes will be scored as 1, no will be scored as 2, and not relevant will be scored as 1. And then we have 3 items that will be reverse coded, where yes will be scored lower, that is 0, and no will be scored higher, which is 2. And the items that we will be reverse coding will be 8, 15, and 16. So what will be our baseline to say that whether the content is trustworthy or it's not trustworthy is, if the score is 0, obviously we say that there is no trust. For low trust, we have computed it from 1 to 10. If the score is from 1 to 10, then the score will be low trust. From 11 to 30, we will be grading content as medium trust. Then from 31 to 50, it will be treated as high trust. Right now, this baseline that we have developed is, you can say it's very arbitrary, because we have to pilot test these indicators. And once we have the data, then we will be able to clearly determine the classes or categories and boundaries of each level of trust, whether it is no, whether it is low, whether it is medium, or it is high. Because we have to get the data from our pilot study, then we will do a lot of inferential statistics, factorial analysis, and blah, blah, blah. And then we will have the exact number, like what should be the range. For online platform specific trust indicator, again, yes will be treated as no, as 2, no will be treated as 1, 0, and not relevant will be treated as 1. Here, since we have just 6 items, the range of no trust will be again 0. And for low trust, it will be 1 to 4. Medium trust will be 5 to 8. And high trust will be 9 to 12. So this is all about the trust indicators. We will be soon using these indicators on content to see that what kind of data we get right now. And these are all the researches, not all the researches. I have consulted more researches than I mentioned here, but since as a researcher, we only mention those researches that are particularly and directly relevant. Therefore, here in bibliography, I have mentioned the researches that are directly linked to whatever I talked about right now. But obviously, there is a lot of research and literature that is available with respect to trust and different dynamics of trust that is being consulted. And I have been working on this thing since last, I believe, 3.5 months. And I'm really, really open to different ideas and feedback that you have. If any criticism or recommendation, really happy to hear them, because this your input and feedback will help us in building this whole trust index that we will be using at national level in future through Kalam platform, which has commissioned actually this whole activity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Najma. This was like, it was quite an eye-opener how much of effort that may have gone into this. I mean, I'm sure there is a lot more dimensions that we need to be brainstorming about, and hopefully towards the end of the session we can come to those things, those aspects also. In the meantime, my dear friend Osama wanted to plug in his work, and in the sense really help us understand all these factors that Dr. Najma has been speaking about. These are the people that are going out there in the field and really